to so I can show them this stuff. So. Now, my only fear in this is what I don't want to do is turn this into a ZAP class. So I'm going to show you some things, but just know I'm showing you mostly to show you how to get the reviews and stuff, but then watch for some of the, I'll send out some videos and things. So, okay, so let me turn off lights for a second. Is that good? Can you see that better? Okay. So on the ZAP system, one of the things you may or may not be aware of is with the ZAP system you have a website as well. So I'm going to pull up my website, which I have just gone and purchased the domain name of russorchard.com, and then I've just forwarded it to my ZAP site. So what you're seeing right here is my ZAP site. And you'll notice that the reason I bring that up is to show you is right here is where it shows the survey satisfaction ratings. Right here, and you can see that it's got the 5 out of 5. So how you're going to get that there is one of two ways. So as you have closings, Century 21 is going to send out on your behalf through a system that's called Real Satisfied a survey to all your clients, asking them to do a review on you. So that's one of the ways and when those come back in, they will automatically post here. The other thing that's cool with it is you can set it up through Real Satisfied to have it automatically go out onto Facebook and all that too, so that it's posting on social media as well. But what I wanted to show you though is in the event you haven't had any closings yet and you're still wanting to get reviews, what you'll want to do is go through and put your contacts in here. So as you put your contacts in here, you can see I've got 127 contacts in there. What you'll want to do is go into the contacts here. And then, for example, let's just say, let's see. I don't think he's done anything. But. So if I wanted to request a review from him, I can just click on the name of the contact here. So I'm into Brandon Barrett's contact. And then if you click on more here, then I can click this and ask for a review. When I click on that, then it's going to then send to him asking, hey, would you do a review on me? And then it gives them a chance to rate you out how many stars and type in a note or whatever, and then it'll bring that right back into the system when they do it, and then it'll also post then over here on your website under this satisfaction rating. So, does that make sense? So that's what I would recommend to do for you guys so that you can start getting some of those reviews to where it looks like you've been around a lot longer or whatever. Does that make sense? So
do you think that, is there anything wrong with just doing that within our own sphere of influence that we really have done business with?
That's exactly where I would start.
Okay.
Yep. I would start with them and just have them say, you know, if it's people you worked with at another job, have them say, I worked with Laura for this many years and this is, you know, blah, 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 stuff like that. Because then, especially if it'll be somebody that says, oh, I worked with her for 4 years or whatever, it almost then gives you this little bit of, oh, she's been in the business for at least 4 years, even though they're not saying they did real estate with you. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. We good? Any other quick questions on this? I mean, like I said, what I don't want to do is, it's an awesome system, and I actually will refer to this. On Thursday, I'm going to bring it up, and I'll show you a few other things that I would recommend you do with it. But anyway, for now, that's probably good. So let me get the screen up here. All right, so what questions do you have as we get going again this afternoon? Any questions for what we talked about this morning?
You can change. I mean, you can moderate it just a little bit, right? Like, say I have a 13-year-old, so I have to get her to school, so I probably wouldn't be able to start like.
Exactly.
Right. So you can just
Yeah, that's, at the end of the day, that's where I guess I was saying, to me, this would be the ideal, and understanding that, yeah, you're gonna have stuff where it's like, oh, I have to go do whatever then yeah, make slight modifications to it, but yeah, like, let's say that you were saying, okay, I can't really start till 10, maybe you just push everything down an hour or whatever. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, what I would just say is you really need to have 2.5 to 3 hours of prospecting scheduled in. And really, it doesn't matter when. Meaning, if you said, well, they're like, and I don't know what would be the reason, but let's say there was no way you could ever do it in the morning, maybe you just say, okay, I'm gonna prospect every day from 1 till 4, and then I'll do appointments at 4 and 6, or something like that. So, yeah, no question that you can do slight modifications. The biggest thing, I get asked a lot, so like, when is the best time to prospect? And the real answer to that is, whenever you'll do it, is the best time. But I've just found morning is the best time to do it, because you have less stress, less problems going on in the morning usually than in the afternoon, and so do the people you're contacting have less going on or less issues in the morning than in the afternoon. So that's where I feel like it's better. But whatever, the biggest thing I want you to do is put together a schedule that will work for you and then stick to it, whatever it is. Does that make sense? So, good question. What other questions?
You said you were gonna touch on FSBOs and expires?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we will.
I'll
Yeah.
wait till you get there then.
Okay, cool, yeah, we're gonna hit on, in fact, in not too much longer, I'm gonna start into, we're gonna kind of switch gears a little bit, once we finish the business plan. So, okay, so I think where we were at on the business plan was on the hours worked per day, is where I was saying, figure out the schedule. So ultimately, what you should do is figure out what your schedule is gonna look like, and then from there, you'll know what the hours worked per day would look like. That make sense? Okay, next, so prospecting. So yeah, we're gonna finish this up first, but then what we're going to do is we're gonna put a list up here of every possible way that you could prospect or generate leads. So, or get sources of business. But you'll notice on this particular line, there's 3 lines. So here's what I will tell you. You should have 2 or 3 sources of business that you're gonna work in. Now, we're gonna create a whole list of them, and there's gonna be a ton to choose from. At the end of the day, I don't know that it matters which one you choose. What matters is that you stick to it. Because if you will have 2 or 3 sources of business and choose those 2 or 3 and stick with it, it will work. It doesn't matter what source it is, it will work if you'll stick with it. Now, with that being said though, on the very first line there, write in SOI, or sphere of influence is what SOI stands for, is sphere of influence. That has got to be one of your sources of business. So the other 1 or 2, remember I was saying you gotta have 2 or 3, so the other 1 or 2, you'll choose from the list once we create that list. But SOI's gotta be one of them. Because remember when I said, if over time your business doesn't do this and doesn't get easier over time, one of the things I know is you're not working your sphere of influence. Because even if you said, well, I don't really have a sphere of influence, great. I'm gonna teach you how to create one. So it doesn't matter if you have one or a big one, don't, because sometimes people will say, well, I don't really have a sphere of influence, I'm new here, or whatever. It doesn't matter. The ones who do have a big sphere of influence won't call them anyway, so they might as well not have one. So you're kind of all on equal ground, right? So, okay. So that's sources of business. Total hours prospected, again, that's where you're just gonna be, you should be able to look at your schedule to say, okay, I'm gonna be doing 3 hours a day, or whatever. Average contacts per hour. So on average contacts per hour, right in there, it's gonna be between 8 and 12. So for you guys that are newer, it's gonna be between 8 and 12 contacts per hour. Now, the difference between 8 and 12 is going to really boil down to, it depends on how you're prospecting, meaning if you're knocking on doors, you're gonna get less contacts per hour than if you're on the phone. But I also feel like when you're knocking on doors in person, when you're in person with people, you're gonna be more, I was gonna say successful, I don't know if that's the right word, but
Engaged.
yeah, it'll be easier to get them engaged than if you are over the phone. Over the phone, it's easy to hang up on somebody. But, so there's advantages and disadvantages, I guess what I'm saying. If you're in person, you have more, a better chance of connecting with them versus over the phone, but you're also gonna get less contacts per hour than if you're on the phone. So it's a trade-off of what you gotta decide, okay? So somewhere between 8 and 12, the other thing that's gonna make a difference with that is there are systems out there that you can use that if you put all of the people you're gonna call into the system that's called Mojo, then it'll call 3 people at a time. So you could be 3 times as effective using one of those dialers than if you're hand dialing by yourself. Because it'll call 3 numbers at the same time, and then once somebody picks up, then it disconnects the other people that it's calling. Does that make sense? So you can get a hold of people a lot quicker, which means you probably could be even above 12 contacts per hour if you're using a dialer. But they're also pretty expensive. It's like $130, $140 a month, but you're 3 times as effective. So anyway, all right. So total contacts. So how many total contacts you will do, and you can do that either per day or per week or month or however you want to do it. But I would say to probably do, this is how many contacts per day I'm going to do. Total doors knocked, how many you're going to do, and then total appointments set that you want to do. And again, either per day or week. Ultimately, where you want to get to is that your appointment set is that you're setting 1 a day. If you could set 1 appointment every single day, you'll do great in this business. Okay? All right, listings, total listing appointments attended. On that one, that's going to be dependent on how many listings. Remember up at the top we put how many sellers you were going to do? So if you were saying you were going to do 8 or 9, you're probably going to need to go on about 3 times as many appointments to get that many closings. So like if I was saying I was going to do 8 sellers closed in the next year, then I'm probably going to need to go on 24 listing appointments, because some of them you're going to go on and it's just not going to work out. Others you're going to go on, you may get the listing, but then it doesn't sell or it falls through or something changes, whatever. So I just would say you probably need to say 24, 3 times as many, at least as a newer agent. You're going to need to appointments attended about 3 times as many as you want to do. And then total taken, I would probably say, again, as a new agent, you're probably going to say, you'll take 75% of the ones that you go on, or 50% you go on you would take, and then 75% of those would sell. So the percentage sold is going to be 75, 80%. Any questions on that? Are we good? All right, so sphere of influence. Total people in my sphere of influence as of today. To some extent, I would say on this one, if you don't know, look at your phone and see how many contacts you have. And that's probably your sphere of influence, okay? So, and then the next one is total people in my SOI end of last year, which, again, if you're new, it's going to be just how many is this your total, the same as today. But then, how many do you want to have is then going to help you get to the next number of total people added to my SOI. So how many do you have now? How many do you want to have? And the difference between that is how many you need to add. Make sense? And we'll say more about the SOI stuff on Thursday as well. So I will email my SOI every month is what you want to have in there. I will mail my SOI every quarter. So you should be doing an email once a month and a mailing once a quarter. Okay? And then I'll personally call my SOI every quarter. I'll post on social networks, blank times per blank. So here's how I want you to think about that. Think about social networking or social networks like Facebook as a 4-to-1 ratio. Think of it like a barbecue. So on like your personal Facebook page or Instagram, if you were going to a barbecue, are you going to go dressed like this? No. So you shouldn't on your personal, and now on a business page on Facebook, yes, be dressed like this. But on your personal, treat it like a barbecue. Meaning, if I was going to a barbecue, I'm not going to go dressed like this, so I don't want to have my picture like this. If I went to a barbecue, and if you invited me to a barbecue, and I was doing this at the barbecue. So Carmen, who do you know wants to buy or sell real estate?
My aunt.
Oh, great, awesome, that's fantastic. Let me get her information so I can call her. Which Okay, great, but if next month I come back, hey, Carmen, who do you know wants to sell real estate? And the next month, who do you know wants to sell real estate? If every time you see me, all I say, who do you know? Who can I help? What's gonna happen?
You're not gonna be one of those friends.
Yeah, you're not gonna get invited anymore, right? So think of Facebook or social media as that same thing. Like, if I just occasionally ran into you and ask you, who do you know, it's gonna be okay. But if every time I see you, I'm bugging you about it. Now, I had a neighbor that what she would do is, she was doing some network marketing thing, and on Facebook she'd always put, if you wanna save money on your phone bill, contact me about this. Like, that's the only thing she would ever post. And pretty soon, you just swipe right by, right? You don't even care. That's what'll happen, so you need to have it be a little subtle and less often posting that way. So for me on this, I'll post on social networks. I usually just would put 4-to-1 ratio is kind of what it needs to be. So 4 things that have nothing to do with real estate to every one that you do something about real estate. So now, the caveat to that is, let's say you were doing an open house or something and something funny happens, posting about that on there, oh, I was doing an open house and blah, 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 blah. Like, if you do it in a subtle way, it can be okay, you know, or let's say, and you gotta be a little careful with what I'm about to say now, but let's say you were out showing a house and you come across something really weird or unique in the property, take a picture of it and post it and talk about it. The only thing I say you gotta be a little careful is this is somebody else's house, so you can't do anything that would like identify, oh, look, I was showing this house and put the address down. You wouldn't wanna do that, because if you don't have permission to be taking a picture of something in the person's house, you don't wanna be doing it. Does that make sense? So if you did, as long as it can be like no proof of to where it came from, so you just gotta be a little careful. But it can be kind of cool of, wow, I saw this retro whatever, and take a picture of it and putting it on there. Just by doing that though, I was out showing houses to a client and came across this. Like, it's sending the subtle message of I do real estate. Make sense? Okay. All right, so on the next page is mindset, which we've been talking about, books to read and things. So part of your business plan, you should be identifying, and the idea of this is to be reading 1 book a month in there, so you can, as I throw out books, if you want to, I know some of you have been keeping kind of a list, this would be a fine place to do it, or wherever. And then same with audio program stuff. As far as company meetings, I will attend the Morning Ascent. Morning Ascent is that morning meeting I was telling you about here, which if your office is not doing it, oh, I was going to make sure to give that to you guys. If your office is not doing it, you can always watch it on YouTube, the one that we do in Salt Lake. So if you want to do that, it's just, if you go to youtube.com, and then if you did a search for Century 21 Everest training, it'll bring up the channel, and then if you subscribe to that, then it'll alert you every time we go live on that to do a training. So that's one way, or you can always just go to YouTube and do search for Century 21 Everest training, and it'll bring up the channel, and then you can go watch whatever we do. So let's see, I will attend Summit. You guys do it quarterly, right? Mm-hmm. So I would just, once a quarter. Base Camp would be sales meeting. We just call it Base Camp. Century 21 Systems Training, which is essentially going to be next week. You guys will go through some of the system stuff, I think. And then the New Agent Coaching, which is what we're doing right now. The business vision stuff, you can go through and fill out that. They'll record your listing presentation, create a dream board. The next page is skill sets. So we talked about the 12 skills. This is then now saying, okay, I'm going to role play how many times per week, who identify role play partners, chant and memorize, which I love this, we got to get this typo fixed. I will chant and mesmerize the following scripts. So you can mesmerize some scripts. So, and then write out the following scripts, I'll be coached by, and what specific skills you're going to work on. So I had you kind of rank yourself on some of those. This is where you'll put that in. And then you can see the accountability over here. I'll sign and execute an accountability contract with blank, each blank. So typically when you're doing an accountability contract, it's monthly. So it would be a scenario back to where I was saying, if I told Laura, all right, I'm going to work out 5 days a week for the next month. So out of every 7 days, I'll work out 5 out of the 7. And if at the end of the month I haven't done that, I'll pay you the $10,000. So that's where I'd say, I do an accountability contract with Laura each month or whatever. And then let's see, I'll track my numbers. You can see what ones you should be keeping track of. And who additional accountability partners would be, what systems and strategies you want to implement this year. So like the ZAP system is one of the ones I would say you want to implement in this year. And like I said, we'll get more into that. And then challenges and solutions. So we talked about as part of the goal setting, you got to also identify what are the challenges to me accomplishing it and what are the solutions. So here it is. So like the very last thing on this business plan is, okay, here's what I want to accomplish under my goals section here. What are the challenges, and here's my plan to do it, but what are the challenges that I'm going to come up against, and then what are the solutions that I can do to come up with them. All right, what questions on the business plan?
On the challenges, if you maybe not necessarily have the solution right away, can you just leave it blank, right?
Yeah, well, and in fact, actually, that would be the best thing to do is if you come up with a challenge and you're not sure what the solution is, then yeah, I would say that would be the perfect time to either, you could contact me, you're more than welcome to do that, call me, email me, and just say, okay, here's the challenge and I'm not sure how to overcome it, and I'll help you through it, or talk to your manager at your office. But yeah, definitely I would say figure out, if you don't know the solution, that would be okay, but I would also say don't just leave it forever, meaning
Find a solution.
yeah, say, okay, I gotta figure out a solution, and I may have to ask around of, okay, what would you do, if this was the scenario, what would you do, how would you get around it? And the answer's there, it's just a matter of you gotta find it, does that make sense? So, and I'll be happy to help you try to figure it out as well, so.
Can you go over the numbers again on if you want to take 25 listings, how many appointments do you need to set?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's go through. Here's how I'm going to do it a little bit different, I think. And if this doesn't fully answer it, then tell me and we'll dig deeper, okay? But so, remember I said to put down 240
Right.
days worked, okay? And remember I said also you should be setting one appointment every day. So let's run through and let me show you what happens. If I said, okay, I want to get 240 appointments in the next year, so I'm going to schedule one appointment every work day, so I'm going to get 240. How many of those set, so I'm going to set 240 appointments. Now remember, part of what we're going to do is go through and pre-qualify people. So we're not going to go on every appointment we set, either because we decide not to go or they cancel on us, because that's going to happen as well, right? So of the 240, what would be a number that you guys would be comfortable with saying, what percentage of those would you guess we would go on? And let's be a little conservative.
50%.
Okay, I was gonna recommend that, but does anybody have heartburn with that? If we said had too much to drink at lunch or something, I guess. So Diet Coke, promise. Okay, if I set 240 appointments, do you guys feel like it would be realistic to say of the 240 set, I would attend 120 of those? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay, so go
So
ahead.
when you say you're gonna set 240, but you're only going with 20, are you calling the clients back and saying we're not gonna attend, or?
Great question.
What
So
are-
one of two things. So when I said it, I wanted them pre-qualify them. So I wanted to find out more. So let's say that I scheduled an appointment with you to come out and talk to you. You're a for sale by owner, let's say. And so then I say, all right, let me just run through. In fact, let me show you guys where this is at. Inside your book. So the first few pages, the stuff we're covering this week don't have page numbers, but then there starts to be page numbers. So where I want you to go to, where the page numbers are, is, find it here. Page 59 is 60. So there's two different pre-qualified ones. So let's say, let's say I've just scheduled an appointment with you, go to page 59, and I say, okay, so Ed, before I come out, there are a number of questions I need to ask you, okay? So if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me when I come out on Tuesday? Say no.
Say no.
Yeah, because I'm going to show you why I wouldn't come out on the appointment. If you said yes, I'm coming out on the appointment. Okay, so so you're not planning to list your home with me. Okay, well, are you planning to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home?
Yes.
Okay, and so tell me again where you're moving to?
Be closer to the kids.
Okay, and how soon do you have to be there?
Within 3 months.
3 months. Okay, so when I see you, how much do you want to list your home for? Tell me some outrageous number.
750.
750. Okay, so as a professional real estate agent, I study homes and prices every day. Therefore, I assume you'll list with me at a price that will cause your home to sell, correct? And then you say, nope, I will only do it for 750. Like, it's like, nope, I'm not gonna, if I don't get my price, I just won't sell, I don't care. Okay, so what price won't you go below? 750. Okay, so how much do you owe on the property? 900. I mean, I'm just giving you the examples of why I wouldn't come out on the thing. Okay, so you owe 900, you won't go below 750. Do you have the money to bring in to pay the difference? Nope. Well, are you willing to do a short sale? No. Okay, well, like, I don't know how this is going to work then, you know what I mean? So, okay, will you help finance the home for the buyer? Do you want your cash out? Well, there isn't any cash to come out in this scenario we're talking about. So describe your home for me, So ultimately, it would be during that, if I figured out you were just like, no, I want 750 and my house is, like if I were pricing it, I would say it was only worth 600 and you're like, nope, 750 and I won't go below it. Well, so remind me why you were selling again? I just want to see if I could get that price. I'm not really that committed to doing it, if it was something like that, that's when I might start going, all right, well, I don't know if I'm going to go out. Now, remember, as a new agent, I'd say still go do it. But that would be one example. Another one would be, let's say that you're a for sale buyer and I set an appointment with you, and then I called, so let's say we'd set it for tomorrow. So tomorrow afternoon, I call you tomorrow morning. Hey, Ed, just calling to confirm our appointment. And you go, oh, I listed my house last night with somebody else. Oh, well, nothing I can do now. Like that, those are just examples. Or the other thing that may happen is just they call you back and go, you know what? We asked you to come out and list our house. It was a friend of yours. And then they say, last night we got in a car accident and now it's not going to happen. Just anything. But so that would be the examples of why I would set it. And like I say, hopefully it's not 50% that you end up on, but I'd rather be kind of not too uncommon. Now, here's the difference. If you're setting 240 appointments with people in your SOI, you'll go on way more than 120. But if you're working just like the general public, so you're out knocking on doors and you get it, you're going to have people, like I say, in the moment say yes, and then they talk to their spouse and go, yeah, she doesn't want me to come out. No mind. Okay, so we set up, 240 set, 120 attended. Okay. Now, of the 120 we attend, are we going to list or get a contract signed by a buyer on all 120? What? Yeah, I wish, exactly. But probably not. So let's again just say, well, let's say that 50% of the ones we go on, we're going to get a contract signed. Is that reasonable? So now I'm at 60 that I get a contract signed. Now, not every contract we get signed will equate to an actual closing though, because again, you're going to have some that you may list the house with them, but then they wouldn't come down on their price. You thought it would work, but it didn't work. Or it's just there's something in the neighborhood that's bad, and so it just won't sell for whatever reason. So again, if we just stick with the 50% thing of the 50 contracts signed, that you would get 30 of them that would close. Now, let's say that we had that times by the 10,000, there's going to be a $300,000 income. Does that make sense? So is that kind of helping with what you were asking, or do you want more?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
So, but that's where I would say, if you looked at it in terms of listings, and in order for you to set an appointment every single day for a listing, you're gonna have to reach out into some of the just listed. You're not gonna probably be able to get that just off of your SOI, although I am gonna show you a way that you probably can. It's just gonna take some time to get there. But, I don't know, did that help? Did that answer what you wanted, or? Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. All right. What other questions you guys have?
Did you want to go over the sources of business? Were we gonna do that?
Yes, it's exactly where we're headed. Well, I just want to make sure we're good on business plan, but then we're going to head there right next. So, what else on business plan? Anything? All right, so here's the, are you comfortable with how to fill it out? Okay, so your assignment then is to get that filled out. You don't have to necessarily do it tonight, but again, let me just make sure you guys get it. When George looked at all the top producers and said, what is it that they have and do that the agents who are not as successful don't have or don't do, one of them was a business plan. And so what he noticed, they always have a plan. So we have gone through and talked about how to fill it out, how to create the plan. Now it's on you to, if you want to be that business owner and be successful, create the plan and the schedule, and then saying, okay, now I'm going to follow it. Make sense? Okay, so next then. So the next thing in your book is lead generation. So we're going to start into this lead generation stuff. We're going to get started on it today, and then we'll spend a lot of tomorrow on it as well. So we're 150. Okay. So any other questions on anything before I jump into that? Okay. What's your job?
Leader.
Okay, good. To be a leader, right? So your job is to be a leader, and the number one skill you have. Okay, good. So now as we're going to start to get into that now, into communication. Now, but before we do, I want to make sure that you guys are clear on a couple of things, because another book that I am reading, in fact, this one I haven't finished yet. I'm still in the process of reading, but it's called Influence.
I just bought that.
You what?
I just bought that.
Oh, did you really? Was it at George's recommendation?
It was.
That's what I figured, because
Yeah.
that's why I got it too. But I'm only like a couple of chapters into it, but I'm reading it going, okay, agents need to be reading this. Now, here's why. Now the reason I'm prefacing this and where we're heading with this is I want to really explain to you guys, I want to have a conversation for a minute about what is the difference. Now, well, let me back up even further. Your job is what? What do leaders do? Okay, good. Yeah, see, I'm getting you trained. Good, I love it. But forget that for a minute, because yes, they do. But what really is leadership? Just explain to me. Assume I don't know, I'm a little kid and I come and go, Mom or Dad, what's leadership? What does that mean? Like, explain to me what leadership is.
To me, it's bringing out the best in your team.
Okay.
Working, just leveraging their strengths, and bringing out the best in them.
I like it, good, thank you. What else?
Motivating. I mean, that's kind of the same.
Okay, yeah,
Well,
no,
not really.
Yeah. Okay. Motivating, okay, good. What else?
Training and influencing.
Okay, training and influencing. Okay, good. In fact, the second word he said there, influencing. John Maxwell, do you guys know who John Maxwell is? John Maxwell talks about leadership. Like, that's kind of his specialty, is leadership. One of the things that he said is leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So when I say to you, your job is to be a leader, really what I'm saying is your job is to do what? Influence people, right? Now, what is the difference, though, between persuasion and manipulation? So, for a second, think on that for a minute. But if I'm going to persuade somebody to do something versus manipulating them to do something, what's the difference?
Manipulation is a lie usually.
Okay, good, yeah, that's where I wanna go, is exactly that, is manipulation is not necessarily perceived as a good thing, and it's usually a lie with another way I look at it is, it is a short-term result in whose benefit?
The person who's trying to manipulate.
That's right, usually whoever's doing the manipulating, it's all about them, right? What would be persuasion? Now, sometimes people think of persuasion as kind of like manipulation, but what would persuasion be?
Leading somebody down the path that you want them to
Okay, good. So leading somebody, now I want to fix just one thing in what you said. I love it. She said leading someone down the path you want to go. I want to change one word on that to where leading somebody down the path they want to go. That's the only difference I want you to think about is, now, the reason I say that is manipulation is doing what's in my best interest, but for me, persuading is getting somebody or helping somebody, leading somebody to do what it is that they want. Let me take that back, because they may not necessarily want to do it, but it is in their best interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now the reason I bring that up first, because we're going to go through now and we're going to talk about lead generation and generating leads. And as part of that process, though, is going to be us persuading people. But now keep in mind, we're persuading them to do what?
To go down some path they should go. Or-
That,
What's
love it. No,
best-
I think that's good. To go down a path they should go. Even if maybe they don't recognize that they should go down it. Now, I want to be really, really clear on this piece before we jump into it, because the most crucial, important thing of everything, remember I said this training is going to be a little different than probably anything you've ever heard anywhere else in terms of real estate training or any sales training, is because of this. Your intention, so the difference between persuasion was over here. Persuasion and manipulation over here. The only difference is your intention. Is what is your intent? Because if your intent is to do what's in their best interest, then you can persuade them or lead them down a path. Over on manipulation, it is what's in my best interest, and it's a lie or doing something that's not in the person's best interest, but might be in my best interest. So what is your intention? So when we start this whole conversation about lead generation, we have to start with what is your intention? So when you are prospecting, or let's even just go bigger to real estate, when you decided to get into real estate, you did it because you wanted to make a lot of money, if we're telling the truth, right? We don't want a ceiling on our income, all the stuff we said. But what does your intention have to be? So what should when we're going to prospect or lead generate, what does our intention need to be?
We want to help people.
And so we have to start with that. That's exactly right. Anytime you're going to have a discussion about this, we have to start with, my intention is to be over here of helping people do what is in their best interest. Okay? So we have to start with the intention. Now the reason why I bring all this up when we talk about that is the skills that you would use to persuade somebody are the exact same skills that you would use to manipulate them. Meaning, like when you see a con man take advantage of, when you're watching a movie and you see a con man who's really takes advantage of manipulating somebody, they're using the exact same skills that we would use to persuade somebody or to help them. So I always have to stop and really make sure that we hammer in on this, because the skills that you would use to manipulate or take advantage of somebody are the exact same that we would use to persuade them and help them. It's just what your intention behind it is what's going to be the difference of if you're manipulating, meaning if it's a positive or if it's a negative. Because the skills that somebody would use to take advantage of you are the same ones you can use to persuade someone. So, are we good on that? Like, I always feel like I'm a little worried when I start to go in and teach this, that people are like, well, wait a minute, like, you're like, remember in, I don't know which episode of Star Wars, But the one Jedi walks into the bar and the guy comes and asks him a question and he's like, "You're gonna go rethink your life." And the guy's like, "I think I'll go rethink my life." Like you're kind of, it's almost like I worry a little as we start to go into some of this that you're gonna be like, these are like Jedi mind tricks that like, you're taking advantage of people or whatever. So I just always want to be really, really clear that this is not about taking advantage or manipulating people. It's about helping them get what it is that they want, even though they may not recognize that's what's in their best interest or that they want. But your job, and you'll see, so from this point forward, we're going to work on a lot of different skills that will help you with this. But I just want to be really, really, have I been clear enough? Like that it's about helping people get what they want in their best interest. Because here's the thing, I want to be real clear. If I figure out it's not in their best interest to sell or to buy, I'm going to tell them, and we're not going to do it. But if it is, then I'm going to help them through it. And sometimes it's in their best interest, they're just scared, and they don't know how to do it or what to do, okay? So, all right, questions on that? Okay, so the next piece of this then is, I want to talk about for a second, before we jump into it too much more, is on this mindset piece here. We're going to talk a lot about the way that your brain works, because the way that your brain works is like a computer. So in a lot of ways, your brain is a biochemical computer, and everyone else's brain works the same way. Now, what happens is something like this, is 10% of who you are is conscious. 90% of who you are is unconscious. So I'll give you another book here. This one's actually a pretty easy read, and the guy that wrote it lives in Utah. He is the sports psychologist for a lot of the Olympians, mostly the Winter Olympics. So for the Winter Olympics, he works with them on their mindset and stuff. He says it like that it's think of your brain as being like an iceberg. 10% of it's above the water and 90% is below. Think of that's how your brain is. 10% is conscious, the other 90% is did I tell you the book?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm like, you guys are all like, we're ready. I was like, I thought I said it. Fearless Mind. The Fearless Mind, sorry. Yeah, it's a cool name, and it's a great book. Hold on. I have all of these on my computer, so let me just...
Did you say Fearless Mind?
The Fearless Mind, M-I-N-D. I think I have all of them here. So as I give you these, I'm going to pull this up so that as I tell you the names, I can go look them up. Maybe I don't have them. Oh, there it is. Craig Manning.
Craig Manning?
Yep. M-A-N-N-I-N-G.
Who wrote Influence, but that's kind of the big topic.
Influence is written by Robert Cialdini, C-I-A-L-D-I-N-I. Yeah, I'm really liking, in fact, as you read through that book, what you will find is you'll notice what I said, is it's like a lot of these skills are just skills that somebody would use to manipulate someone. But, which is why I always have to start with you gotta be right intentions on this, okay?
You said Craig what?
For the Fearless Mind, Craig Manning, M-A-N-N-I-N-G.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For influence?
Influence was Robert Cialdini, C-I-A-L-D-I-N-I. Okay. So let's go back. So the next piece of this is 10% of who you are is conscious, 90% is unconscious, meaning there's a lot of programming, and remember I said your brain works like a computer. Now we're going to refer to this over and over for the next few days. Your brain works like a computer. Now, in fact, watch, let me show you what I mean. I'll give you the perfect example. People will respond to the question in front of them. So watch what happens. If we were outside on Los Angeles, is that Avenue or Boulevard? Avenue. Los Angeles Avenue. So I'm on Los Angeles Avenue out there, and I want to know what's going on a mile down the road. Should I ask a giraffe or should I ask a turtle? Okay, why?
His head's up there.
With his heads up, you can look further down the road.
Okay, you guys just proved my point. None of you answered, when I asked the question, if I want to know what's going on a mile down the road, who should I ask, a giraffe or a turtle? None of you said, who talks to animals? Like, why? Neither of them are going to give me an answer. Like, so why did you guys not say that? See, you just proved my point.
That was an analogy.
Well, no, but you proved my point. You will respond to the question that is in front of you. So when you're so remember, I started to, we're getting into this process here. See, what happens is people will respond to the question that they're asked. See, you guys I gave you the choice, which would you rather ask? By asking you that question, you answered the question the way that I assumed you would, not the way that is legitimate, like, meaning like, none of you were like, who talks to freaking animals and expects them to talk back to them and tell them, like, neither of them are going to tell you what's going on a mile down the road. Now, it does make sense that a giraffe could see better what's going on down the road, but they're not going to tell you what's going on down the road, right? Even if they can see it. So notice, people will respond to the question that's in front of them. Our brain works like a computer. Just the same as if on my computer here I said I want to see the books, I clicked on the thing that brings up books and it's going to bring up books. See, the way our brain works is like a computer. People will respond to the question that they're asked, okay? Now, so the 10% is conscious, the other is 90% is unconscious. Now, we're going to talk about what that means in a lot of different aspects of your life, but the overall what it means is we are most of the time unconscious. We are doing things in an unconscious way. Now, the proof of that is your thinking is out of sync with reality by a half of a second. Meaning when you think you're doing something, you've already done it by a half a second. So we are out of sync, meaning, I'll help you with it. If you've ever been in a heated conversation with a significant other, and you said something, and as you're saying it, you're like, oh crap, I should not have said that. That's the proof that, like, it happened before you were consciously aware of what you were doing, is why you were like, stop, come back. So we are out of sync with reality. So meaning, typically you can get people to respond based on the question that you're asking. They're gonna get the answer. What am I trying to say? Our thinking is out of sync with reality, but 90% of us is unconscious, meaning most of what we are doing is unconscious. Now, that is helpful for us in terms of what we are doing, prospecting, presenting, all of those things, but it also then comes back to be some of the detriment of what gets in the way of our success too, is because 90% of what's going on is unconscious. Meaning we're doing it before we realize we're doing it, even though we know we shouldn't be doing it or should be doing it, and we do it anyway. Are you following me where I'm saying? Okay. All right, so now the reason I bring all that up, because the next piece on terms of this lead generation, a lot of what is going to control your success in getting appointments with people is going to be your mindset or your belief. If you believe, part of where I'm going with this is you have got to believe that you are the best agent for these people. Even if you're brand new. If you're brand new, you still have to believe. So let me help you. Trudy, why should somebody work with you even though you're brand new?
Because I have their best interests. I'll work to make sure that I will keep their best interests at heart at all times.
Okay. So are there agents that won't do that?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, 100% there are. No question. Okay, so part of where I'm going with it is you have got to, under this mindset thing, you have got to believe that that is true. If you think, well, I'm new, and I might not be able to help them, and maybe somebody else would be better than I would be, it's because 90% of who you are as a personality is unconscious, that part will override everything else. Said in a different way. I'm going to keep trying to come up with different analogies, because here's what I know. Even though I'm explaining it and you're going, I get it, you don't get it. And I'm not saying that to be mean, but this is something you're gonna have to really hear a number of times before it really sinks in. Think of it this way. Think of it as a ship. The captain of the ship is up there in charge of, well, actually, let's do it this way. This is probably, since I was already using airplanes. I'm a pilot of an airplane. I get in and I'm flying the plane. So the pilot's up in the sky. Who do they rely on as far as getting to the destination? Now, to some extent, they plugged it into the computer and it's telling them where to go. But beyond that, who do they have to rely on to help get them there?
Air traffic.
Yeah, what is air traffic control telling them to do?
Directions and where to land.
Yeah, where to take out.
Yeah, as soon as they take off, like, now, even though I told you, like, my dream was to be a pilot, I'm 8 hours away from having my private pilot's license when I decided to come into real estate, because I was wanting to be a pilot, and then I said, I actually I had a brother-in-law that flew, and he was I had seen two uncles that were pilots that, like, I saw them at the end of their career, and I was like, that's the life I want. Then I saw a brother-in-law at the beginning part and was like, ooh, I don't want to do that though. Like, so I decided real estate was what I wanted to do. But so I was 8 hours away from that. Now, typically what happens, as soon as you take off at the airport, air traffic control is saying, okay, turn to this heading. Now turn to this heading. Like, they're getting them going on the right heading, okay? So think of that as air traffic control is your conscious. The pilot is here in the, if I'm trying to give this analogy so that you'll understand it right, air traffic control is keeping them from having a collision. But the pilot's the one doing the air traffic control says this is what you need to do, and then the pilot has to actually go do it, okay? Now, so this part is I'm talking about just for a second, we're doing a little sidebar for you to understand how you work as a person. Your conscious tells the unconscious basically what to do, programs it, and then it goes and does it on autopilot. You following me? So, which is why you can see people, like, let me give you an example. Somebody who, and I don't want to go too far down this road, but a little bit. Somebody who has problems in relationships over and over and over and over and over again that you've seen, can you think of somebody? The problem they have is something down here is, as much as they might want to do it, they've programmed it to create the scenario that they keep having this problem over and over again. Why do they always seem to have the same type of person that doesn't, whatever? It's because of what's going on in this unconscious, the subconscious programming. Most of what you are is unconscious, okay? So I want to be clear on that piece of it, and think of it as this is air traffic control telling the pilot what to do. Meaning that air traffic control can tell the pilot, they could run them into a mountain, and the pilot, for the most part, is probably going to do it. That's how your unconscious down here doesn't know right, wrong, good, bad, doesn't understand any of that. It just kind of does what the conscious convinces it to do. So not everything, your conscious doesn't let everything into the unconscious either. I know I'm getting like way off in the weeds for a minute here, but your conscious is what decides what's going to get into the unconscious. It's like the air traffic controls, this is what you need to do, and then it takes over and does what this says to do, even if it's not in its best interest. Okay? Okay. So now here's the point. Let me bring it back to prospecting. You have to believe at the unconscious level that you are the best agent. You got to believe that. So you got to keep telling yourself that, whatever you have, this is back to, for a second, if one of the challenges that you had is, I don't believe that I'm going to be able to do this, then what's the solution to get yourself to believe it? Because if you don't believe you are the best agent for those people, you're not going to get appointments. You got to believe that. So first my intention so if you were keeping some notes on like things that are important, first is your intention's got to be good. The next thing is I've got to believe that I'm the best agent. So part of why I asked Trudy the question of why should they use you over another agent when you're brand new and haven't done anything yet? Well, because I'm going to find out but what if you don't know the answer? What if I ask you a question and you don't know the answer?
I'll find out.
Yeah, see, that's, as long as you have that belief that like I am going to be the best agent for them, because I am going to do what's in their best interest, and even if I don't know the answer, I'll go find it out. I'm gonna bust my butt, I'm gonna give them the best customer service, like, you gotta have that belief down here. It's one thing to say it, I guess here's another way. It's one thing to say it, but it's another actually to believe it. This is where your beliefs are. Follow me? Okay. So in terms of generating leads, are you like, you're looking at me like, I'm trying to, like, I don't know if I should believe what this guy's saying or not. You're okay? Okay, good. I just looked over and she had kind of this look like deer in the headlights, like I don't know what's about to hit me. Like, is that what it is? Okay, so, okay. Which, by the way, I do want to always say, like, if at any point in the training you, like, want to call bullshit on something, you're free to do that. You can be like, I don't believe that. Like, because remember, now here's why, I pulled off, the other flip chart that I had up here only had like 2 pages left, so I changed it out. But, because remember I said, my job is to enable you to know. So, like, if I see that I feel like you're having a question or something, I will stop and go, we good? Because my job, unless you know, so let me say it differently. Typically you go to a class and they want you to believe what they have to say. I don't want you to believe what I have to say. If you believe what I say, you lose. If you don't believe what I say, you lose. I want you to know. Does that make sense? So if I say something you're unsure about or whatever, question it to the point that you know. Because when you know, which is tied this all together, when you now know, it'll go down into here and it'll make a change. When you just up here believe or don't believe, it's this. Make sense? Okay. All right. So we got to have the right intentions, and we got to have the belief that we are the very best to help them, and that there's nobody better. As long as you've got that, we can now move into starting to hit on some of this stuff. So we good? What questions? You good?
I just feel like I need more ammunition to feel confident that I really can be the best.
Good.
I just feel like I need more ammunition that way. Like when you go into an appointment, and if I'm a client and I say, so what are you gonna do for me that's different than the others? Like, I really do want you to make a hard sell to me. What would you say to someone?
So, meaning you're the client and they're saying to me, you want me to make the, okay, good, let's do it.
I want you to sell yourself to me.
Okay, so Laura, here's what I need you to do. If you want to get this home sold, I just need you to sign the contract. Go ahead.
I'm not going to do it.
Well, but what type of agent did you say you wanted?
I want an agent that's going to work hard for me, get my home sold in 30 days at top dollar.
Okay, but you also said you wanted the hard sale, right?
Yes.
Okay, sign the contract.
No, I want to hear it.
Well, but you wanted the hard sale, right? So if you want to hear it, you got to sign the contract.
No, I want to hear it first.
Okay, so tell me what it is, what questions you have. And then bam, I'm going to go into
Yeah,
then.
so what makes you the best? What makes you stand out from the rest?
So rather than answer that question right now, I'm going to hold on that, if that's okay. Because I'm going to answer it, but we got a long ways to go before I can answer it. Because I'm going to help you be able to go and answer that when the client asks you that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So, but you got to be, so I, to some extent, I'm saying, I want you to know, and I do want you to know, but I want to take that one and let's put it up there on the shelf for a
So I'm
minute.
getting ahead of the game
Yeah,
again.
no, which is fine, but I'm going to put it up here on the shelf. Don't let us forget about it.
Okay.
And by the end, hopefully, by even probably Wednesday, I'll ask you, have we answered that question we put on the shelf? And if we haven't, then we'll pull it off and answer it.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, because you even said that new agent that came out of your class, he sounded like a seasoned agent
Yep.
so quickly.
I'm going to help you how to do that.
Okay.
So that's the good news, is that's the thing, is that I'm going to show you how to go do it to where ultimately the reason I approached with you the way I did there, when you were saying, you said I want the hard sale, good, I'm going to give it to you. Sign the contract. Like that, you can't get any harder of a sale than just sign the contract. I mean, Now, the truth is, when you say, well, I gotta know all this other stuff, well, then now I'll step back and answer those questions. But the hard sale is sign the contract. Does that make sense? So, yes, it's, and I'm doing some of this a little bit, because I did the same thing over here, when she was saying, show me how to deal with it, I wanna think about it. Well, when I showed her how to deal with how I wanna think about it, really turned into something else, which is kind of what you just did as well. So, I'm doing that on purpose to show you, and it may not make sense yet, but it's going to. This is what I would say. Okay, cool. All right, what other questions? You guys are like, yeah, every time we ask a question, you're like, I'll answer it later. So, right? Okay. So one of these days I'll go, oh yeah, let's answer that. Okay. So here's what I want to do now, is I want to create a list of every way that it's possible to prospect. So here's what we're going to do. So for the rest of today, and then most of tomorrow, we're going to then go through and so we're going to make a list of here's all the ways you can prospect, then we're going to go through and talk about them, do some role play with them, and make sure you guys are starting to understand how this process works, okay? So, I was just having another thought, or something else. But we'll come back to it. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create, basically, I'm going to have 3 lists up here. So I want you guys to just start throwing out to me all of the different ways that you could generate a lead, sources of business that we could get. And then I'm going to write them up here in one of 3 columns, and then we're going to talk about those columns. So just start giving me ways that we could generate, or sources of business or generating leads.
Referrals and SOI.
Okay, so SOI, I'm going to put here, which I'm going to put underneath referrals, because that referrals from your SOI. And then I heard somebody say door knocking. Okay. What else?
Social media.
Okay. Good.
Cold calling.
Okay. Now, if we are going to cold call, since that came up, let me, I always feel like I have to do this, pause for a second on cold calling. What do you have to do before you get on and just do random calls?
Need a list.
You have to make sure they're not on the do not call.
You gotta check the do not call list, okay? So I have to do that, like, so that if you get in trouble, I can say, I trained you to, you gotta check the do not call list. So, okay, good. All right, what else can we do?
Open houses.
Okay. What?
Networking.
Okay. Good.
Mail outs.
Okay, I'm gonna call that advertising, but I'm gonna throw up mailers. And then I'm gonna also, since I said it, I'll write down advertising. So, but good, yeah, mailers. What else?
Volunteering.
Okay, I'm gonna keep good with it, but let's throw that under networking, because kind of you're gonna go volunteer with the idea of networking.
Because networking covers a lot.
Exactly.
You know, like, could be the grocery store.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep, nope, I'm with you. That's why I'm good. If you throw it out and I think it falls under one, we'll take it, but I'm gonna call it networking. What else?
How about the contacting the FSBOs and the expires?
Okay, good. Okay, what else?
Floor time.
Okay, good. Now, do all the office, I don't think all the offices do that, do they?
You know, it is fun.
I don't think all of them do, but I know Cindy does.
Good question, yeah. So the question is, what is floor time? Floor time doesn't, well, never really was that huge of a thing, but even less now. What floor time is basically you in the office, if a phone call comes into the office that was like somebody going, hey, I'm just calling Century 21 because I need to sell my house. Can you have an agent come out and talk to me? Whoever's on floor time would get that call. So it's a good idea to be really nice to whoever answers the phone or has walk-ins come in, is one recommendation I would give to you guys, because there are people that are gonna call in, or somebody just walks in to, they're driving by, see Century 21, and go, oh, I should just pull in, and then they walk in and go to whoever the receptionist is and says, hey, I need to get an agent to sell my house. Now, if the office has floor time, then that person should get it, but the thing I learned too is, just because somebody signed up for floor time doesn't mean that they actually show up for it, and then the receptionist, quite honestly, what happens a lot of times, they don't know who to give it to. So, it's a good idea to be friends with them, because, you know, buy them lunch every now and then, something, okay. But, so there's not a lot of floor time that goes on anymore, and not a lot that come in or call in anymore either, but that's another way. Okay, what else?
Sign calls.
Good, sign calls. So sign calls is just, if I put a sign out, on a property and somebody drives by and sees it, they just call the phone number off the sign to say, hey, how much is this house? Okay, what else?
How about like foreclosure, short sales?
Okay, so in what way?
Well, like on Zillow, you know, they show like pre-foreclosure homes that,
Okay, yeah. So meaning like they would show it and then you're gonna go contact them?
right,
Okay.
saying, I'm a short sale specialist.
Okay. What else?
Geographic farm.
Okay, I'm just gonna call it farming.
Well, would farming be like door knocking and?
So it could be typically, when I think farming, what that means to me is that if I were to say, okay, I'm gonna take this neighborhood that's right over there, and I'm just gonna, like, I'm gonna go take around pumpkins for
Right.
Halloween. And then around Christmas, I might go knock on their door and give them something else. And then in the spring, I knock on the door and give them, here's some seeds to plant for whatever. So, yeah, so farming is you're picking an area and just going back over and over and over and over and over.
Now, would just listed, just sold be part of farming, or is that?
So
different
could
source?
be part of farming, typically just listed, just sold is not. Typically, you're just listed, which actually, let's throw that up here, even though we could put that under code calling or door knocking, but just listed, just sold. So the difference I would say of that versus farming is this may not necessarily be in my quote unquote farm. I may go other places to do the just listed, just sold versus farming is the same area over and over and over and over and over.
Would you consider networking to your church members part of networking?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say that's, yep.
How about your agent website?
Good. That was, I was gonna say, I think there was only one thing that I thought we were missing, and that was it. I think, unless anybody else can think of anything else, but internet leads or web leads would be the other thing that I was.
I've got another one, which actually has helped, just wearing my name tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wearing a name tag. Okay. So unless anybody can think of anything else, that probably covers it. So, you'll notice that I grouped these under 3 different areas. Now, really, this one, the reason I put it in the middle is I think it can go either direction depending on how you do it, and we'll say a lot more about that. But we're going to talk a lot about SOI, just not right now. What do these have in common, and what do these, like I grouped them together for reasons. So what, as you look at these, what would you say the commonality is of this and the commonality of this?
The one on the left, you're actually going out physically and working at it, whereas the other one is more of a passive.
Good.
Like you want the business to come to you.
That's exactly how I would have worded it, is this side is passive, this side we would call active. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And what I want to do is we're going to go through and talk about each of these areas, and we're going to talk about how to work them and all those kinds of things. So what would be the advantage of this active side?
Others get to know you.
Okay, good, I like that.
You're
Yeah.
more in control of what's going on. It's up to you getting out and doing.
Okay, good, I like that a lot. Yeah, a lot of this, the advantages is you can control, to some extent, the number of contacts you're gonna have. Okay? What else?
As a client, I would look at the agent saying, wow, they're a go-getter. You know, they're out there working hard, stomping the pavement.
Good, yeah, good. Now, here's how I like to think about this as well. Love what you're saying. I want to add to it. Here's how I like to think of it, is think of it as like, again, you know, this is the best artistic you're going to get from me. Think of these as hurdles, like in track, the hurdles that you're running. Really, for a listing, or a buyer too, but let's talk listing for a minute. In order to get a listing, there are 3 hurdles that we've got to jump over. What's the first hurdle we have to jump over with somebody? A seller.
Getting their
Getting in
trust.
the door, getting,
Setting the appointment.
Let's say, first thing is we got to find somebody that wants to sell. So like the first hurdle we've got to jump over is, do they want to sell? Once they say yes, the next hurdle we have to jump over is, will they use an agent? So first hurdle is, do they want to sell? Next hurdle is, will they use an agent? What would be the last one then?
Me.
That's right. And that last one is it you? They want to use an agent. The question is it you? You're exactly right. So think of it this way, especially with these for sale by owners and the expireds. Think of those in terms of these hurdles. For sale by owner expired, or even foreclosures, well, they may or may not want to, but they need to sell. So, for sale by owner and expired, do they want to sell? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another way to think of this hurdle is, I like to call them hand raisers. These people who are for sale by owner expired, even foreclosure or short sale, they're hand raisers. They've raised their hand to say, I want to sell my house. So they've already cleared that hurdle. So the only hurdle left we got to clear is, will they use an agent? Well, on a for sale by owner, do they want to use an agent?
they don't think they do.
Yeah, they don't think they do, right? Which is now we're back to, do we need to persuade them to do it, right? So, meaning, and I'll show you in a second, the whole reason we're having that conversation about leading people and persuading them and helping them do what's in their best interest, for sale by owners fall under that category big time. Because they think they want to sell, but they think that they don't need an agent and that it's in their best interest not to, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, that's not true. So, what about an expired? Do they want to sell?
Yes.
Are they willing to use an agent? They did, yeah, they did, right? Now the only thing missing is you. So if you're looking at these jumping the hurdles, expireds are really good because we know they want to sell, we know they're okay with using an agent, they just didn't have the right one, was the problem, right? For sale by owners want to sell, they just don't know that they need an agent and they don't know that it needs to be used, so we got to help them see that. So foreclosures, do they need to sell? Probably, because they're probably, the challenge you have with these short sale and foreclosures when you knock on their door, they think some miracle's going to happen. They're like the ostrich with its head in the sand. Like they think somehow they're, and I'm not saying this to be like mean or judgmental or anything, because it has been something very unfortunate that I feel bad for them that's created it. But with that being said, they probably need, in their best interest is they probably need to sell, they just don't want to, they don't realize that they need to, and then the day of the foreclosure sale, they'll want your help, but now it's too late. There's nothing you can probably do about it at that point. So it's a sad scenario, but part of our job then is going out and helping them to see that, but I like to think of these people as being hand raisers, okay? Now, so this side is the advantages, we're a little bit in control. What would be the downside to working this? If there is one, maybe there's not.
Well, other than the just listed and just solds, I would think, especially for newer agents, it's kind of out of their comfort zone. For sale by owners, they've made it clear they don't want to work with an agent. Expires are already upset because their agent didn't get it sold. Foreclosure, like you said, they're in denial land. Door knocking, a lot of people just look at the peephole, they don't even want to open the door to a stranger, so it's just, out of It's a
Good.
very uncomfortable,
Yep, you're right on track, right where I was going with it. Now, with for sale by owners and expireds in particular, and maybe even foreclosures and short sales, is there competition there? So that can be one of the downsides is, and I wanna echo that really what we're saying is your skills need to be better in these two areas particularly, because you're now throwing yourself in the ring with some of the best. Which is not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm gonna show you how to go out and compete with them so that you can go out and be a competitor with those people. Does that make sense? Alright, are we ready for a break? I told you I'll keep going, but you keep going? Do we need to,
I kind of keep on good.
do I need to turn the air down, cool it off a little? I was gonna say, no response, I'll go get it. It's feeling warm to me. Okay. So, that could be the only downside to, in particular, this, is you gotta really work on your skills. You need to be role-playing and doing that as a newer agent to get better. Now, I wanna be really, really clear with this though, because we have a number of agents that hit the ground running as a brand new agent and can go out and compete with the expireds and for sale by owners, and you can go get those listings right away. So a lot of it is the mindset and belief, and then using the skills that I'm gonna give to you, that you can go out and compete on that. So, but I also just want you to be aware that like it can be also a little more, you're putting yourself into the ring, like you're ready to go, kind of a thing, okay? Now, on this side, let's talk about, what is the advantage to this side?
Sometimes people will come to you
Yeah,
on those.
the good news is, on this, most of these, that's what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
is the people who respond are gonna be hand raisers, meaning if we said the same thing, they either need to sell or buy. We gotta then find out if they use an agent or will they use you, but yeah, the good thing about this side is the people who show up there are, hand raisers. Again, the fact that if somebody responds to a social media post and says, hey, I wanna sell my house, well, let me give you a good example of that actually. So we'll go with social media for a second. On this, a few years ago, I had a guy that I had gone to high school with. And it was one of those scenarios that I got a friend request, looked at it, didn't know who he was, but when I looked at all the people I had in common friends with, they were all high school people I had gone to high school with. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, accept. So I'm on there one day and he posts on there, who likes the neighborhood they live in? Now, for me, being an agent, I know what that means is what? What's he really saying?
He's in a real estate agent, he's selling.
He's what?
He's selling real estate.
No, and well, he could be, but he wasn't actually.
he's looking to move.
He's
Yeah,
looking to-
what that told me is I'm thinking about moving, who likes their neighborhood they live in? Told me he didn't like the one he's in.
And he wanted to live in the neighborhood that people liked.
He wants to go somewhere people like. So, here's what I did. He says, who likes their neighborhood? I did a comment, love my neighborhood. And then he wrote back, well, where do you live? Then I moved from being like just out in the open to it to over, I sent him a private message and just said, hey, also I'm a real estate agent, if you want help in buying or selling a home, let me know. And he said, oh yeah, he wrote back, hey, we are thinking about it, we've been considering it for a little while. Remember those times we used to hang out over at Bill Gale's house? I'm like, I remember hanging out at Bill's house. I have no idea. I still, like, that's why I started with, I don't know who he was. But he's like, remember we used to hang out over at Bill's house? And I was like, I was at Bill's house all the time. I have no clue. I didn't say that. I'm like, oh yeah, those were good times, weren't they? I have no clue who he was still to this day. But what happened was that it kind of fell away for a little while. And then all of a sudden one day he sent me a private message. Hey, I saw this short sale out in this neighborhood. Can you check it out for me? So yes, these people can be they're hand raisers that are coming to you. Now, what else? What else could be, any other plus sides that you could think of for this?
They kind of like open houses, networking. They kind of already know a little bit about you. Like they've had an opportunity to speak with you. They know your temperament. Maybe they can sense
Okay.
your
Good.
integrity or
Good, I
whatever.
love it, yes. In fact, thank you for saying that, because I want to really highlight what she just said there. Remember, I started this whole day talking about when John and George decided to create this company, it was really about helping you become your very best. Now, one of the things Trudy said there, which I really want to highlight, is who you are. In fact, I think Emerson said this, but who you are speaks so loudly, people can't hear what you're saying. So that is so crucial, like that if you get nothing else from what we talk about this whole week, take away from that who you are you have to be working on who you are as a person, because people will pick up on that, and that is going to send a clearer message than anything you say to them. If they can sense that this person is a good person who is there and wants to help me, like they'll forgive the fact that you're brand new. I mean, if you get nothing out of this week, take that. You have got to constantly be working on improving who you are as a person, because they'll work with you just because of that. I don't know what it is. They sounded like a dork when they were at the door, but I just felt like they were a good person that would take care of me, and so I chose to list my house with them. Like, if you get nothing out of this week, take that. Okay? So good. I love that. All right. What would be the downsides to this list? Okay, I'll help you. Can you control how many people are going to reach out to you on social media to ask you for help in buying or selling a house? You can post stuff all day long, but can you control what they do? How about an open house? I heard Lori say, yeah, she said she did an open house, was it this weekend?
Yes.
And that she had one person come. Can you control how many people are going to show up? Now, to some extent, we're going to actually tomorrow, I'm going to get into open houses. I'm going to take you through, like, if you're going to do an open house, this is how you got to do it, and it will work. So we're going to do that tomorrow. So that's your commercial to come back tomorrow, okay? But you can't control, though, really, how many people are going to show up. You can do some things that will influence it, what's going to show up, but you really can't control that, okay? What about mailers? Can you control who's going to respond to those? No. So the downside to this is that they're hand raisers. The downside is you just can't control what response you're going to get. You don't know. You don't. Over here, I can say, look, I'm going to do just listed calls, and I'll keep calling all day till I get to 30 people. You can't say, well, I'm going to just keep sending mailings till I get 30 people. Meaning you could, but you're going to probably run out of money. And when you do get a sale, it's probably not going to pay back what you spent on the money. I mean, I'm beating that up a little worse than I mean to, but you get the point, right? Now, let me give you one other thing, though, on this. So let me go through a couple of things with you. In terms of door knocking or just listed, just sold, what percentage of people are in the process of buying or selling a home? You're actually pretty close. Now, so she said 10%. The actual number, according to when they go out and take the census, what they have found is 12% of the population every year is in the process. At any given moment, 12% is in the process of moving. Now, that includes people who are renting homes as well as the buyers and sellers of real estate. So if you factor out that 12%, to just people who are buying and selling, it's 7%. So you've got a 12% total that are including renters, but you take out renters, 7% of the population is in the process of buying or selling. So when what?
It seems low.
Does it?
I don't know. So nationwide, that's the.
Nationwide,
national
7%
average?
is in the process of buying or selling at any given moment.
I wonder what it, well, I wonder what it is based on our region.
I'll have to look and see if I can find that. I haven't really looked to see specific, like by a region what it is, but I'll bet it's not that much different. So, but basically what that means is this. Now, what is the difference between anecdotal data and empirical data? Because now this is going to become very important in a minute. Anecdotal data is the stories we tell. Empirical data is like scientific research with like real numbers. Now, this is gonna become important in just a minute, so I'll say more about that. But on a just listed, let's change colors here. Just listed, just sold, or a door knocking, cold calling, there's a 7% chance that that person's gonna be doing something real estate related when you knock on their door. Now, I don't know if you look at that as good, bad, or indifferent, but it is what it is. Like, that's why I say there's anecdotal, our business is full of anecdotal data, stories that we tell. People make stuff up all the time. So to some extent, when you hear people start throwing out percentages and stuff, you want to be a little bit questioning on that as far as like, okay, prove it. Because, and I'll give you an example of that in a second here. But there's a lot of anecdotal. I'm going to give you what is the empirical data. So 7% of the population is in the process of either buying or selling in any given year. Okay? So as we look at this and go through it, if you go out and just knock on doors, there's a 7% chance somebody's thinking of buying or selling. If you knock on their door, which, do you think, is that good, bad, or what do you think?
Well, it's good, I guess, because there's a chance.
There's a chance, that's right, there's a chance. It's better than sitting home not going and knocking on the door, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what about for sale by owners? What have you guys heard, and you may not have heard a lot, but what have you heard about for sale by owners and the percentage that end up listing their home? Or any, and I'm more relying on you two that have been in the business a little longer.
I thought it was like pretty high, like 75%.
Okay. Yeah, so typically what, this is gonna be your first example of anecdotal data versus empirical data, okay? Because the numbers that I usually hear, in fact, I'll show you the script we have in our own book here in a second, is that anywhere between 80 and 98% of for sale by owners, oh, I did that under the expireds, of for sale by owners end up listing their home with a real estate agent. But well, it's not true. But you hadn't heard that? Well, good. I'm glad you hadn't heard it because it's not true. I'm going to show you that. Now, you're going to hear that a lot, though. In fact, even in our own script book here, go to page. I'm going to also be answering one of your questions that you asked, Carmela. I don't know why. I got to figure out why. For some reason, our page numbers in this book in Utah are different than the one here, and they shouldn't be, but they are. I don't know why. They're off by like 2 pages, and I'm like, what? There's something extra you guys have that we don't, or something. I don't know what. So go to page 72. Looks like we lost our live stream. Maybe Jim will come back in and fix it. So now's the time. What do we want to talk about? Nobody's listening. Oh, wait, let me turn this off. Make sure. All right, so page 72 is handling objections. So remember I said there's basically 10 objections that people are going to give you? There they are. Oh, there's 12. Maybe that's the difference of why our page numbers are off. We only have 10 in Utah, I think. Huh, I'm going to have to look through that to see what's different. Oh, I know what it is. I see. In Utah, number 6 is really 5A, and number 12, or well, yeah. So because of that, then 10, 11 is 10, and 12 is 10A. Doesn't matter. All right, here's what I wanted to point out. If you look at number 3 on page 72, when somebody says, we'll save the commission by selling it ourselves, the script we've got, oh, sorry. I got more real quick. I'll try to walk away.
You're on the mic.
I know, right? Okay. Hopefully that when that's down, it's down too. All right. I was actually at a training once when I said that earlier about going to the bathroom. I was actually at a training that was probably a room about this size, and there was every chair pretty much was full, and there were 2 instructors, and they both had the lavalier mics like this, and one of them walked out and I went in the bathroom,
Oh, no.
and you could hear, and then the toilet flushed, and it was bad, so, anyway. All right, so number 3 here, we'll save the commission by selling it ourselves. So here's the response you would want to give is, I agree with you can save the commission by selling yourself, but are you aware today there are over blank homes for sale, however many homes are for sale in your market? And last month only blank sold, that means there's a 3-month, 4-month, 6-month, whatever the supply of homes, if no other homes came on the market, and last month blank homes came on the market. What's worse is the fact that only 2% of for sale by owners sell themselves and 98% are listed and sold by real estate agents. Now, you're gonna hear that kind of stuff, we even have it in our own book here, that 80 to 98% of the for sale by owners list and sell their homes. Not true. So, but here's the challenge. That is so rampant in our industry that we even have it in there. So, hey, we're telling all the good stuff while the live stream went down, it looks like.
Okay, I thought maybe you were telling lies down here, so you had to turn it off, right?
That might have been too, actually. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I looked back just a minute ago and I was like, I don't think we're streaming anymore. So anyway, it is just so prevalent that everyone believes it. It's kind of one of those things that is just the belief. I even believed it until one day I had basically this conversation with somebody where they were saying, you need to start questioning a little bit more when you start hearing numbers and things. So what happened was I was in a training, there was a national trainer there, I won't tell you his name, but he was there doing a training for the company that I was with at the time. And he showed up, and when he showed up, he said something along the lines of this. I think the actual number that he used though was that he said I think 88% of all for sale owners end up listing their home. So I went up to him doing what I'm kind of telling you guys you should start doing. So on a break, I went up to him and I said, hey, you brought up that 88% of all for sale owners end up listing their home. And I'm just curious, like, because where people usually say it is according to NAR. Now, they'll say, according to NAR, 88% of all for sale owners end up listing their home. So I went up to him and I said, hey, I've tried to find that on NAR's website, but I've never been able to find where NAR says that's true. And I said, can you get that to me? And he said, yeah, give me your business card, I'll send it to you when I get home. So I gave him my business card. I never heard from him again. Well, so I had sent him a friend request on Facebook, and he had replied to it. And so I sent him a message through Facebook the one day and just said, hey, remember you were going to send me the data of where NAR said that 88% of for sale by owners list. And he wrote back, said, oh yeah, I'll get that for you. I never got it. So a couple months go by and he posts on a post on Facebook about, you know, according to NAR, 88% of all for sale by owners list. Well now here's the thing. When you're going to challenge somebody on it, I would never do it like middle of the class. So like I waited until a break and then I went up and asked him. Well, then I had asked him through a personal message on Facebook. Well, then he posted again on that and I was kind of like, all right, well, I've tried to be a little discreet. So this time I went on to that post and they said, hey, remember you said you were going to send me that? I've never gotten it from you. He deleted the post, deleted my comment right off there. Now, so here's what I've learned. Now, and I wasn't trying, honestly, I was not trying to be a jerk. I really was like, everybody says, according to NAR, I wanted to see it. Now, I'm going to actually show you, in fact, let's do it right now. I'm going to show you the empirical data. So remember I said there's anecdotal data and empirical. So let's take a look now at the empirical data about this, okay? So what I'm going to pull up for you guys now is what NAR does have on this. So NAR does a survey of home buyers and sellers every year. So they go out and they will send out to home buyers and sellers every single year to find out from them a number of different questions. And then NAR, so what the process looks like is this. In July every single year, NAR goes to Experian to get the county records for home buyers and sellers. Now the reason they do that versus going to the MLS is because they want to include for sale by owners in this process. So they want to get just people that have bought and sold a home. So in July of every year, they will send out this survey asking a bunch of questions of people who have bought and sold homes. Then they do follow-up on that from July until September to get the answer. So like they're right now trying to get people to respond to their surveys that they've sent out. Then, well, they're probably about done now. But then they're going to, from now until end of October, so they'll spend the next month compiling the data. Then in November, NAR does a convention every year, the National Association of Realtors Convention. And at the convention, they'll release the survey. So what you're looking at right here, this is the 2017, which is the most up-to-date survey that they have. So they're compiling 2018 right now. In November, they'll release it, and then I'll go by it and I'll change out these slides. Now, so here's what they have found. Now, I'm at least going to be able to show you where this number of 88% of all for sale by owners list comes from. What you're looking at here is under the for sale by owners section that NAR puts out. So remember, like people will say, you know, according to NAR blah, like for me, I always want to find it on their survey. Because if NAR is saying it, I want to find where they're saying it. Because I want to see, really, this is it. So I'll show you where I think this misconception has come from. But this goes back to 1981. So if you can't see this, this is 1981. This line is the agent assisted. So these people used an agent to sell their house. The magenta here is the for sale by owners, and then yellow is other, which is just, I guess, they didn't use an agent, they didn't do it by themselves, they did it some other way, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what other options you have, but whatever. So, what you'll notice though is in 1981, 15% of all the homes that sold. So I want to make sure you guys understand. What that's saying is of every home that sold across the country in 1981, 15% of them were a for sale by owner. Which means what? Can for sale by owners sell their house? Yeah, 15% of all the sales were, which means 85% of the rest of the sales were agent assisted. Now, what I want to be really clear for a second on is I'm not trying to dissuade you of anything for sale by owner. In fact, it's just the opposite. What you're going to see when I'm done here in a second is you're going to see how much a for sale by owner needs you. Remember, my job is to enable you to know. I don't want you to just believe me. I want to prove it to you so that when you go talk to a for sale by owner with conviction, you can tell them it is in their best interest to be using you, rather than just going out and... Part of where this comes from, actually, a number of years ago, I was talking to my wife about this training and things, and I had made some comment about for sale by owners, and she was like, you know, if you weren't an agent, I would try to sell our house for sale by owner. I wouldn't use an agent. I was like, what? How could you say that? Like, that's like, I can't, but it goes to the point, though, of what people just think, well, yeah, we make a lot of money, and what value do we add? Well, I'm going to show you the value that we add throughout this whole week, but in just a minute here on these slides. So now notice what happens, though. Now here's what's interesting. The internet really became pretty mainstream about 2003-ish, is about the time where people started getting, you've got mail. You remember that? So 2003-ish is kind of where the internet started becoming pretty mainstream. Now, I remember at that time, I had a neighbor, or have a neighbor, he still lives there, that he's an OBGYN. And I was talking to him one day, this was probably back in about 2003, and I remember I said to him, aren't you a little worried about the internet? Like, meaning people can just go online to WebMD and you can put in what your symptoms are and it'll spit out what the problem is, and like people aren't going to need doctors anymore. They can go online. And I said, I'm a little worried about real estate agents that way, like maybe they won't need us. Because back then, like when we had data on the MLS, it was like, don't share it with anybody. Like we kept it, and we, you know, if somebody advertised when they did like home sale magazines, you withheld the address. Like you might have the city or whatever, because you wanted people to call you, because you felt like, well, if we give them the address, they won't need us anymore. What we found out, though, is that's not true. And so in talking to my neighbor that was OBGYN, I said, aren't you worried, like WebMD, people aren't going to need you anymore? And he said, no, it's 100% the opposite. What we're finding is people go online, they research it and think they're gonna die, and so they show up to the doctor because everybody's got, like, if you've ever gone on and done any of that, like, you start, oh, well, I've got that. Oh, my man, maybe I have cancer. I better go see the doctor. That's what they found. If you look at this, what would that story tell you that the internet has done for real estate agents?
It's helped them.
Yeah, I mean, meaning less people are selling their home since the invention of the internet, less people sell their house on their own. Like, so keep that in mind when, like, people try to get you this scary, like, oh, we're not gonna need because of Zillow, people aren't gonna need real estate agents anymore. Well, that's not the trend of what's going on. What's going on is they're using us more. And you can see that here. Now, as you look here, look at what the numbers were. I think when people say 88% of for sale by owners list their home, that's not what this says. What this says is 88% of all the sales that took place were using an agent. Does that make sense? So that's where I think some of these numbers come from of when people are going, oh, well, you know, 88% of all for sale by owners end up listing. I think they're interpreting this chart wrong, because that's not what it says. Now, here, as I've thought about it and tried to dig into it, here's what I found. There is no way to know what percentage of for sale by owners list. There's no way to know. Why?
Don't have all
Because
that data, it's too hard to get.
That's right. Because if, let's say, that somebody in this neighborhood over here decides to put their home up for sale and they plug a sign in their front yard and it's really small and you can hardly read it, and they don't do anything else but put a sign out that says for sale by owner. How would we know, if we're the National Association of Realtors, how would we know that house is for sale? You wouldn't. So there's no, see, that's what I've learned as I've tried to research this and tried to figure out, like, okay, because I wanted to find out what is the truth. What percentage of for sale by owners do list their home with an agent? And what I found was, there's no way to know. Now, you could do your own little study on it if you wanted to in your own neighborhood, which this might be fun to do, I don't know. But in your own neighborhood, say, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to every time a for sale by owner sign goes out and see what happens with it. And I'm gonna keep track over the next 10 years. Every time a for sale by owner goes up, do they list with an agent, do they sell, do they take it off the market? Now, I had one neighbor, the home I live in, I'll tell you a story about this later, but when I moved in, not long after, a guy a couple streets over moved in and throws a for sale, like he moved in and the weekend he moved in, he planted a for sale by owner sign in his yard. So I went and talked to him and said, hey, you know, I'm an agent and I can help you if you want to get your house sold, but you just barely bought it, why are you wanting to sell it? And he just said, oh, every house I live in, I just always throw a for sale by owner sign out there, and if somebody will pay me a price that's way higher than what I paid, I'll sell it, I don't care. So, like, how motivated is he? Not very motivated, but like, that really is true, that's a true story. And he would just left it out there for a couple of years, and then home prices caught up to where he was asking, and one day somebody came and offered him the price. He thought he was now getting a killer deal, but in reality he was just getting a fair price. So it's kind of funny how his thinking was. Like, I think he felt like, oh, I'm getting a killer deal on this house. No, he was getting market value for it. It just, he left it there long enough and his price stayed the same till the market caught up with him. Does that make sense? So I just am showing you this because I want you to see, number one, I want you to see that the number of people who really are selling their home for sale by owner has been on the decline. But I also want you to see they can sell it themselves, and 8% do sell the house themselves. Now, next thing, and I promise I'm going to get to where you're going to see, like, this is actually to help you get for sale by owners, not to talk you out of it, even though it might feel like I'm talking you out of it right now. Okay, so this next one shows the for sale by owner and agent assisted sales. So of all sales, 8% were for sale by owner, but of that 8%, what makes that up is 3% knew the buyer, 5% didn't know the buyer. So let me ask you, make sure you understand what I'm showing you. Of the 8% that were a for sale by owner that sold the house themselves, 3% knew the buyer. What are the chances that you're going to get in the way of that? Meaning, like, if I decided to sell my house to my best friend, what are the chances I'm calling you and saying, Or if you called me and said, hey, I can help you get your home sold. No, I'm selling it to my best friend, like, I don't need your help. Like, not very likely. So really, of those 8% that did sell, 5% were available that you could have got. And so 89% were agent assisted, 2% other. Okay, now let's get into some of the good stuff here. All right, now, this is where I want you to see, this chart alone should help you to see the advantage to somebody not selling their home for sale by owner and the value you bring to their house, okay? According to this chart here, this is the selling price of for sale by owners versus agent assisted. So right here is showing of all sales that took place in 2017, this survey, the median selling price was $249. Now let me explain median, because sometimes people get confused between median and average. Average is taking the average. So you're getting what, if 10 people sold their house, you're taking what their sales price was divided by 10, there's your average. Well, averages could be skewed, because like for example, I saw on your MLS, there's a property that's like for sale for $85 million. If that house sells, would that skew the average sales price? That's going to way raise it up. Versus by looking at median sales price, gets you more realistic to what it is. Because an outlier like that of 85 million is going to get kind of chopped off. And we're getting like, what is kind of just the normal price? Does that make sense? So across the whole country, the normal price of all sellers selling their house is $249,000. Now, the reason this is important that I'm explaining the median sales price to you guys is because what are the chances that somebody at 85 million is going to do it for sale by owner? Like, probably not, right? So meaning like sometimes when I show you this data, people would be like, well, of course the for sale by owner is going to be lower because somebody in the upper end is probably not going to be doing it for sale by owner. Well, okay, great. But I would also then say that's why median's important, because it gets rid of those outliers and gets you to what normally happens, okay? All right, so you can see of all sellers, the median price is $249. All for sale by owners, the median is $190. Now, that's in doing both the knew the buyer and didn't know the buyer. Now notice, if they knew the buyer, it makes sense that if I was selling my house to my son, I'm probably going to give him a pretty good deal, right? So that makes sense why that would be so low. If they didn't know, so really, all this so far almost doesn't matter. This is what's important. If the seller sold for sale by owner and they didn't know the buyer, their median sales price was $226,900. Agents, people who used an agent was $250,000. What is the percentage difference between this and this? It's about 10%, right? Isn't that what you said?
I thought it was 2, 6, and 8. I'm seeing a 6 and 8.
Oh, no. Sorry, looking at these numbers.
Oh, okay.
The difference between these two is 10%. Like because 10% of 250,000 is about 25,000. Subtract 25,000, and so it's not quite. But so hold on a second. I just want to make sure you guys understand. Why does somebody sell their house for sale by owner?
Exactly, they're saving money.
Because they don't want to pay a 6% commission. Now hold on. What this says though is what? They lost 10%. So you wanted to save 6, so you lost 10. That makes a lot of sense. So why, now here's the question, why would they get 10% less on the sale of their house?
They're not doing the math. They're not taking the math.
They don't have an agent that negotiates for them.
Okay, yeah, but I'm looking for, you guys are right on, but I'm looking for like, what is the reason that that they get 10% less? And yes, it is because they don't have an agent, I'm with you, but
It sits on the market longer, it's not getting marketed, so they're probably having to bring the price of the house down, they're not negotiating properly.
The buyers talking.
They didn't price it right away.
yeah, you're exactly right. I want to build on what you just said.
Talking into getting it for less.
Now, so stop for a minute. How much do we charge a buyer to use our services?
2.5.
Do they pay you that, or does the seller pay you?
Seller.
Okay, so how much does the buyer pay you?
Zero.
Oh, well, so then why would a buyer not use an agent then? No, there's a reason.
Because they think they don't have
Oh,
to
they
pay
think
that
they'll get a
percentage, so they talk the seller into.
They figure if they go to this for
Down.
sale by owner who's not using an agent, the only reason, so I'm gonna dive even deeper into this for a second. So, a buyer would go buy a for sale by owner because, without an agent, because they wanna save the commission.
Right.
So, the seller wants to save the commission and now the buyer wants to save the commission. So the buyer's gonna offer less than what, but now let's take it a step further. Typically, not all of this, but typically, who is gonna go buy a for sale by owner without an agent? What type of a buyer?
First time.
A what?
Flipper and one that
So an investor?
Yeah, investor.
And do they want a deal?
Yes.
Okay, and who else?
First time.
So is a first time home buyer typically gonna be comfortable going without an agent? I would say no. So who else would be?
Maybe someone that doesn't have good credit.
Well, but unless they have cash, they're still gotta get a loan. So investors and who else? Because it's probably not a first time home buyer, that's your hint.
Family.
Just an experience, somebody who's bought and sold homes before. So you're typically the buyers who are gonna show up are usually more experienced and more, what's the word I wanna use? Savvy, thank you. They're more savvy of a buyer if they're showing up without an agent. So meaning, they think they're saving the commission, but what ends up happening? It hurts them. See, the whole reason for this whole discussion is of me, this empirical data, all this kind of stuff. I want you guys to, like, when you leave here and you go talk to a for sale by owner, I want you to, with conviction, don't be like my wife of like, hey, if I were you, I'd probably do that myself. Like, you should say that, by the way. If I were you, I would want to do this too. You should see that. But I want you to see this to be able to go in and go, no, like, it should almost like, alarms should be going off when you hear somebody say, I think I want to try it for sale by owner. You should be like, no. Like, you don't realize it, but it is gonna hurt you big time to do that. You think you're saving so why do they want to do it?
Because I think they're saving money.
Yeah, so this is where we want to reframe it for them. Like, so I hear you, Lori, saying you want to save the commission, which really what that means is you want to net the most amount of money possible, right? See that, I gotta reframe it to them of, really what you're saying is you wanna walk away with as much money as you can. Well, if there was a way I could show you that you're gonna net more money by using me than going and doing it on your own, would it make sense to use an agent? Okay, great, then what we need to do is sit down and have a discussion about that. See, now that you know this, you can say that with conviction to somebody of like, like when you hear somebody saying, yeah, we're doing it, we wanna do it to save the commission, you should be looking at this going, yeah, but what you don't, like, you're not gonna say it this way, but what you don't realize is you're gonna actually walk away with 4% less is what the median, what usually happens. Does that make sense?
Is that chart on the NAR website?
So yes, you have to buy it though. So it's $20 to get, this is like a huge, like, this is chapter 8 that you're looking at in the thing. So it's a thick thing. If you buy the actual book itself, it's like $150. But so if you want this, you can get it. You go to realtor.org, not .com, realtor.org, or take a picture of it.
Can I take a picture?
Yeah. I need to check and see if it's not copyrighted, I could just give you a copy of it. But if it's copyrighted, I can't. But I just don't remember if it is or not. Of course, I took a snapshot out of it and put it up here, so I guess I already violated the copyright, huh?
One other thing, for sale by owners have to do all the work. As an
That-
agent does the work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I heard one guy, and I love this part of it, is when somebody says that they want to do it for sale by owner, of saying like, are you in need of another full-time job? Like, is that why you're wanting to do it? You need another full-time job? Because it's our full-time job to do, and it is a full-time job. Now, this one, you can Google this and look it up. I don't remember if it was NAR that said it, but there's on there the steps that a real estate agent takes in getting the home sold. It's like 188 or something like that. It's 180 something steps that we do to get a home sold. Like, that's, so to some extent of like, do you need another full-time job? Is that why you're wanting to do it for sale by owner? Well, no. Well, cause like, you're probably gonna have to take time off work to, if you're a school teacher, you're gonna have to take time off work to go show your house. So, but can you see what I'm saying in this? That according to NAR, really is according to NAR, this is their chart. Oh yeah, so I didn't finish. Realtor.org, you have to log in with your NERDS number, your National Association of Realtors, whatever number, they call it the NERDS number. We're a bunch of nerds. But, and in fact, if you care about all this data, you probably are, which I am, so. But if you log in under that, it'll tell you, you can buy the PDF for 20 bucks, which gives you, it's awesome. I'm gonna show you a couple more charts here in a second. So, but this is the main thing I wanted you to see. Now, agent assisted only stated about the same price, but for sale by owner first, then agent assisted, look at what their price was. So you might not want to bring that one up. Hey, after you've tried it on your own, you're going to sell it for even less than if you did it on your own. Now, but why would that be? Why would it be that they tried it for sale by owner first and then used an agent? That their price was so much lower.
It was on the market for a long time.
That's right. The longer a property sits on the market, the lower in value it goes. So when somebody says, we just think we want to try it for sale by owner first and then we'll list with you, like, you almost want to tell them that's the worst thing you could do. Because you're going to net even less than if you just sell it on your own. Because people are going to see there must have been a problem that you couldn't get it sold. Make sense? All right, let me show you a couple other things here. All right, this one and the next one are some of my favorite ones. I use these all the time. But this is the method used to find a real estate agent by first time or repeat buyers. Now, can you guys see this good enough? If not, stand up and come look at it. But what stands out when you look at that? What's the best way for you to find a seller if you want to get listings? What's the best way to get listings?
Referral, your SOI.
Work your SOI, which is now you know why I said you have to have that be one of your sources. 41% of all sellers chose their agent because they were referred by or they were a friend, neighbor, or relative. 41%. Then the next down is 23% used the agent previously to buy or sell. Which really, in my mind, those two added together is your SOI. Meaning, so 64% of all sellers chose their agent because of it being a past client or they were referred by or they were a friend, neighbor, or relative. Because then what happens after that? What's the next best? Third best up there is other. I wish I knew what that was, because it's the third best. They got to remove that secret, because that's the third best way to get a seller. But I don't know what it is, other. But then what do you notice after that? After that, it almost doesn't matter. Like, they're so small, right? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do personal contact by the agent, but notice, it's 5%. Remember, I told you 7% of the people, when you knock on somebody's door, there's basically a 7% chance. Well, which kind of falls in line with this. 5% of all the sellers chose their agent because they had personal contact with them. 5% chose them because of an internet website. 4% visited an open house. 3% referred by another real estate agent. 2% saw their contact information on a for sale sign or an open house sign. 2% referred through their employer. 2% direct mail. So spend a lot of money on that. Make sure you were asking earlier, how do we know, like, when people call and tell us, like, what we should or shouldn't do? When they call and say, hey, we got these newsletters, flyers, postcards, yeah, go spend a whole bunch of money on that. Because there's a 2% chance you're going to get a listing from it. Like, newspaper, yellow pages, or a home book, less than 1%. Advertising calendars, so yeah, buying calendars, there's one person that I know that every time I bring this up, they get mad at me because they're like, I do calendars every year and I get listings off of it. Less than 1%. Now, here's what I will say. if you're doing calendars in conjunction with calling your SOI, I'm okay with it if you wanna do that. But the calendar by itself is not. I've listed a lot of houses that had another agent's calendar hanging on the wall. A lot. Or their refrigerator magnet on the refrigerator. People forget it's even there. Okay? Alright. And then crowdsourcing through social media, less than 1%. Saw the person's social media page without a connection, less than 1%. So, spend a lot of time on that stuff. Right? Okay, last one, then we'll move on. How buyers found their agent. What do you notice here? 42% were referred by or is a friend, neighbor, or relative. Do we need to work our sphere of influence?
Yes.
Am I driving that point home?
You're gonna show us how.
I'm gonna show you how.
Okay.
12% use the agent before to buy or sell a home. This one actually, just a little funny thing on this. I love this. On first-time buyers, of the first-time buyers, 2% use the agent before. I know, how is that possible? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, 2% of the first-time home buyers used the agent previously.
Or maybe they were
Maybe
looking
they
before and
used
not
it.
looking.
I guess,
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was, is we used them to look at houses, but then we went back to them. But you didn't, I guess, in my mind, they didn't, I guess they kind of.
Or maybe they had a side
Maybe they
business,
think
like most agents.
Yeah, it could be
Trying
that.
to sell us.
Or I think it's, my family's used this agent forever or something, I don't know. But then notice though, so number 2 is 12% used them before, 11% is other again, I wish we could figure that out. 9% visited their website, 6% on open house, 4% saw the information on it. These two you could kind of combine together maybe, I think, to be 10%, but then you can see the rest of it's very insignificant. The what?
The yellow pages are dead.
Yellow pages are dead. I know, in fact, the last phone book I got, I took it and I put it on a shelf because I'm like, at some point down the road, maybe 10 years from now, I'm gonna be talking to I'm gonna be in a class like this and I'm gonna have people that are like, what's that? And I could be like, let me show you, it's kinda cool. But, yeah,
Like a Thomas guide, some people don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, because he's in.
Oh, is that
Only
only
in LA?
LA thing?
Oh, what is
It's
it?
a map book.
Gives you
Map
map,
book.
it's a map book.
Oh, okay, gotcha, okay.
Like
All right.
navigation.
So any other questions on that? Cool stuff? All right. Where are we at time-wise? It is 3:21. We didn't take a break, so we can stop a little early, but I want to cover a couple more things. What time are you leaving?
3:30.
Okay, so I got 8 minutes to get you some good stuff. All right, so, I know here's what I'm gonna hit on, and then we'll probably wrap up, is with this. On this side now, I wanna hit on this side for a second, because this is, now that I've kind of set the stage for empirical, anecdotal data, stuff like that. The challenge with this side, this passive side, is that you're sitting back and waiting. Now, the good news is, though, for that, is we did a study on this where what we did is we tracked people who came to an open house. And here's what we found. The people who will show up to an open house, there is an 82, let me say, not there is an 82%. 82% of the people who come to an open house will end up doing something real estate related within a year. Now, I probably should have prefaced it with asking, I should have asked this question first, but what have you guys heard about open houses? Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter, I don't care, just tell me what you've heard. What have you heard they're good, have you heard they're bad, what have you heard?
Great places to generate leads.
Right, I've heard that they're.
But not to sell the house.
Let's say it again.
But not to sell the house. Get
Thank
the
you.
leads, but not to sell
Thank
the
you.
house. Right.
That's where I wanted to go with it, is they are a good source of generating leads, but as far as if I'm the seller of the house, an open house is really not gonna do anything for me as the seller of the house. Very, very rare that sells the house. I mean, now, it's possible that the person who buys it comes to the open house, but they probably found it some other way and just happened to see the open house sign. It's not like they weren't gonna come there and look anyway, does that make sense what I'm saying? Now, so I like to refer to open houses as a seller binky. So from the, I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth for a minute here. I'm kinda gonna be the, back to the persuading versus manipulating thing for a second. Is I'm gonna be on both sides of the in favor of open houses and against them at the same time. Because from the standpoint of a seller, and me as a listing agent, I didn't like open houses, I still don't wanna do them. From the standpoint of me as a listing agent, and if I were a seller, knowing what I know, I probably wouldn't wanna do them. If I'm an agent and wanna generate some leads, other listings and buyers, I love them. Does that make sense? So, can you see how I can be on both sides of the fence? Now, here's why. What I know is, because we did a study on this, we tracked them. The people who come into an open house, we then stayed in touch with them for a year to figure out what was happening. 82% of those people went and did something, either bought or sold a house. Now, I'm gonna give you some stories and examples of that, and we're gonna, tomorrow, I'm kind of laying the foundation today for this, we're gonna get into it more tomorrow. But we tracked the people, and 82% of them did something real estate related. So now, the reason I bring that up to you, and we're talking about that piece of it, is how many of you have done open houses? Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit, I'm gonna prove my point to you in a minute, because most people or trainers you will hear say open houses are a waste of time and stuff like that, and I'm gonna show you why they say that. And they can be, depending on you. If you do them right, they can be very good, and I'm gonna show you how to do it right. But, so give me an example of open house that you held. How many groups came through?
Like 5 families?
Okay. Who else didn't, you haven't done it yet, because you just barely licensed them. No? Okay, so give me like on average, what if you had to guess, how many average people you get come through an open house?
At least 20 groups.
20, okay. How many?
I had one in the valley, about 25, 30.
Okay. You only done the one? And you have one, okay.
And it's been a while since I've done one.
Okay, but when you did?
The last one I did, maybe 5 or 6 people came through.
5 or 6 groups, okay. Now, from all of you, will you promise to tell me the truth? Like, don't tell me what you think I wanna hear, don't tell me to try to make yourself look good, I want the truth. Can we have that agreement? Okay. No, even if it's bad, I want the truth. How many appointments do you get in that open house? 2 out of 25 people? Is that what you said?
Well, those are combinations of different open houses.
Oh,
We're
no.
just talking about one,
Yeah, I want on, so if on average so how many open houses have you done?
like 6 maybe?
Okay, and you've had, so then total, so let's do that. How many total people?
So let's do
Total
the one
groups.
open house.
Okay, just one open house.
I
But not,
found-
don't give me the best one.
Oh,
No, give me the best one. I'm okay with it. I just want to be clear, this is the best one.
okay. So,
And I'm not trying to be mean. I just want to prove a point.
so I found the one buyer, qualified buyer.
Okay, but how many groups first?
4,
4 groups, and you got how many appointments?
2.
Oh, good job. All right. Now, I don't want on all, but like, typically you get 20 to 25 groups. How many appointments do you usually get?
Usually, I'm lucky if I get 1.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was more expecting.
0.
Okay?
0.
Okay, that's what I usually hear. So good job, high five. But that's the norm, is 20 to 25 people, you might get 1. Now, I'm not trying to be negative. I just want, we gotta rip the Band-Aid off, tell the truth, and then we'll fix it, okay? 82% of the people coming, I want to make sure you guys understand this, because if you're going to do open houses, you need to understand this. 82% of the people who show up are going to do something. But, the ones that we didn't get appointments with, tell the truth again. Why?
Well, for me, the last few have been my sellers. And so
What do you mean?
I was listing, doing open houses for my seller.
Oh, okay.
And the last one, my last listing was in Fullerton, which is like an hour away from here. It was a friend of mine's house. And it's funny because I told her the same thing. open houses are not gonna bring, it's not gonna sell your house. But I'll do
And
'em.
down there, you don't want buyers.
Right, and so
So-
I actually have a friend that was an agent, I said, hey, why don't you co-list or co-host it with me, you can take all the leads. We ended up having the person that bought it was driving by, saw the sign, came in, he bought the house.
That's awesome, that's cool.
Yeah, so I kind of felt down with my seller. but
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
we
because
got
you're like,
sold.
yeah, it's not gonna work anyway.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay,
So, I'm sorry.
so typically, why do you not get an appointment with everyone else that came through? Meaning, if you understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying, there's an 82% chance that person's gonna do something in the next year.
You know what, for the most part, I would say 50-50, like, I've sold, I've had buyers, I have sold.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that, the ones you don't though. Cause if normal is 20-25 people, and you'll typically get one appointment, what about the other 24 people? Like,
Okay, well, maybe, if I were to take it, because I have had some flops, some open houses where maybe one or two
No.
groups.
But-
Probably just me not doing my job, following up the way I should.
thank you, yeah, no, thanks, and that's kind of where I wanna go with it, but what is our belief about the people who usually come to an open house?
Looky,
Yeah, see, our belief is that we're the neighbors, we just wanted to come get some decorating ideas. What I'm telling you is, and believe me, we're gonna cover all of this stuff, it's gonna take some time to get us through it all. That's what we're gonna be doing the next few days. But 82%, so out of 100 people, 82 will do something real estate related within a year, but most of them are in a 6 to 9 month window. Meaning, the majority of these people will do something, but it's gonna take them 6 months till do it, or 9 months. So if I were drawing what it was gonna look like, it's gonna look kind of like this. Like, this is 6 to 9 months. So during the first 6 months, not a whole lot, and after that, not a whole lot, but during that 6 to 9 month window, there's a lot that goes on. But the problem is, we say they're a looky-loo. Now, why do we say that?
Because that's what they tell us.
Yes, thank you. They come in telling us, we're not that serious about it, we're just curious, we wanted to just see, we just live down the street, we're not really doing anything. You have to understand though, 82% of those people are gonna do something. Okay? Now, really, the same would be true of these floor time calls. Unfortunately, there's not many of those that go on anymore. Sign calls is 82% of the people who do that are going to do something real estate related. And really, actually, even the internet now, I would say. Now, I'm gonna give you another study we did on the internet, but this one is not, I wanna make sure you understand it as I tell you about the study that we did. This was in 2009. We went back, so 2009, we went to the leads that had come in 2008. So we went back a year. Now, and make sure you follow what I'm saying on this, because you're gonna hear it and you're gonna think, oh, well, that's not that great. But if you really hear what I'm saying, you'll realize how powerful this is. What we did is 2009, we went back to all the leads that came in 2008, and then we went and started calling the ones that agents. Now, when an agent gets an internet lead, they will usually make a decision on if that lead's any good or not within 7 days. But most of them happen even faster than that. Like within a day or two, they'll give up on the lead within a day or two. So what we took was the leads from 2008 that agents had within a week said, this lead's no good, gave up on it. So if an agent said this is a good lead, or I'm not even sure, I'm gonna keep trying it though, because I think it might be a good lead, we didn't worry about those. We just wanted to know if you got a lead, if it came into you and you got it and gave up on it within a week, what happened to those people? So a year later, we called back on those people. 50% of the ones that the agent said they were no good anymore now had bought or sold a home, and they didn't use the company that they initially inquired on. Which that was the interesting. I knew the number would be high of people that had bought, that would buy or sell, but what I didn't realize is that they would end up not using the company that they had inquired on, which was interesting, that not one of them had used it.
Why
So-
did they use the companies?
I think because the agents gave up on them, so they moved on. They felt like that company's not any good, so they moved on. I don't know. We didn't ask that specific question of why did you not? Because that was something actually, as we did the study, that it was afterwards we started looking at it and we were like, hey, not one of them used the company. That's interesting.
So pretty much you have to stay with these people at least a year before you might get something.
Ding, 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 we have a winner.
I was just gonna say that's.
Oh, well then I'll high five you too.
Well,
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, just, to elaborate on what she had already said, is that that's where you put someone in your CRM and you give them a monthly email, and then you give them a quarterly call.
Yep, I'm gonna show you how to
You
do
just
it
never
in,
give
with
up.
Zap. Use the Zap system. If you'll do what I'm gonna show you in Zap, bless you, it will work. So, see you tomorrow.
Russ, can I ask you, you said, we did the survey, was it Everest that did the survey?
No, this was a different company I was
Okay.
with before Everest.
Okay.
So,
Cause I've already found that out in my short 3 months, like whatever leads I've built up in my database, I'm sending out a monthly email, and I'll just check in with them from time to time, and because they're getting a drip from me, like I've had a buyer come back to me that I thought for sure just left me for dead. And I'm like, wow, where did he come from? And it's because he continues to get stuff from me. Because
Yep, you got
otherwise,
it.
why
Yep.
would he call me?
yep, and we're gonna get into all of that. You're exactly right. So I just want you to see on this, the downside to all of this though, as good as that is, the downside is we just can't control it. Meaning you have one person show up.
That was a good one, it was actually a good lead, and I was with somebody, so he took it, but, because he was describing the type of, wanted to downsize, and describing the type of house he wanted to move into, and he was even like, probably, within the next year, so he even gave him a time, so hopefully Jason's name, I hope he follows up with it, because it slipped really good.
Well, wait a minute, what, you hope who follows up with them?
Oh, Jason, I was doing with him, and I didn't know anything, so I just let him have it. But he'll follow up.
You can share that with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
if you're there doing the work,
Part of it.
don't give up, don't turn it over. I mean, you probably have to now on this one, but going forward, don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, don't,
But he
seriously.
gave a complete description of what he wanted, and to me, that's like, and that's just.
Oh, yeah.
He's ready. So,
Totally agree, don't give them away anymore.
Yeah.
You're giving away money, is what I would say. So, yeah, and I get why you did it, but no more.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so any questions on this? Does this all make sense?
Now, the open house, we were selling our house, we always wanted an open house. Is that usually you're doing it also to make the client happy too?
Yeah, that's why I said, yeah, and in fact, I don't think I finished my thought. Like, I call it a seller binky,
Yeah.
because it keeps them from crying.
Right,
Yeah.
Makes them feel better.
Yeah, it makes them feel better. Like, a lot of times, that's why we do them is, meaning, as you advance in your career, you'll probably rely on them less and less. And I guess you tell me if that's wrong, but like, my guess would be most of the top agents are not personally sitting open
Correct,
houses.
they're advertising open house opportunity available.
Yeah, they want you to go do it,
Right.
which at this point, here's the thing, here's how, probably this is the best way I can explain it to you. Because sometimes people will say, like, I would never do it, not so much here, but in Utah I will hear, well, I would never do an open house. And I say, well, 22 years later, me either, I don't want to do them either. But as a new, probably this is the best way I can explain it. It's like saying, okay, with a baby, they gotta learn how to crawl. Like, and you might say, well, why would you teach a kid to crawl? Like, I don't crawl, I wouldn't crawl, I don't crawl around. Well, yeah, I don't crawl around either, but yet we teach babies to crawl first, why? Like, part of it is like to some extent, like if there is an order that kids need to learn things, and if they get out of sequence on learning to crawl, then walk, speak, like if they get out of that, it creates learning disabilities. And it's probably not to that extent with real estate, but I kind of feel the same way of like, the more seasoned you get and you learn how to do this business, the less you're gonna wanna do open houses. But as a brand new agent, it can be a very good, rich source to get your business going. It's a way to keep you making money while you get the skills to not then have to do them anymore. This is probably the best way I can say it. And in fact,
Well, it's the whole building your database. They say that you should at least have 1,000 names in your database of everyone's. And that's a good way of getting them.
oh, absolutely. So in fact, I'll give you a little bit of a precursor and then we're gonna stop, but for today. So think of it, this is the process of what it's gonna look like, is this is what getting your, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but of where we're headed for this, but this is gonna be 6 to 9 months into the future, and this is your SOI. That if you'll do what I'm gonna train you guys in, so what we're gonna talk about over the next few days, if you'll do this, it's gonna take 6 to 9 months to ramp up to this point here. But from this point on, working your sphere of influence, you should be able to plan on using your numbers here. In Utah, I usually just say a 6-digit income, but down here, I will tell you a $250,000 income, and probably higher. I'll show you the math on it later. But from that point on, working just your sphere of influence, meaning, so this is what it should look like. For the first 6 to 9 months, you may end up doing a lot of open houses, but then if this line is open houses, that's what it should look like. Like, early on, I might do a lot of them, but as 6 to 9 months go on, I'm not gonna be doing them anymore, because I don't need to.
So they say the listing agent is the employer and the selling
Yep.
agent is the employee.
That's right, yeah, so a lot of, if you're the buyer's agent, you're the employee going out, yeah, you're exactly right. So, but this is what it will look like if you do it right. Like, you can do open houses and generate business, but then over time, you're gonna get busy enough from working your SOI the way I'm gonna train you to do it, that you don't need to do that anymore. Unless you decide you just like 2 and 1, which is fine too. Make sense? All right. Good day today?
Yeah,
Yes.
excellent.
Very good.
Cool. All right, so let me kind of just wrap it up today with what tomorrow's gonna look like. So tomorrow we're starting at 9 because there's no sales meeting, right?
Right, correct.
And it's Jeannie, right?
Jeannie, like I drink with Jeannie.
Okay, good. So, because I think I called you,
Jeannie.
yeah, I was gonna say,
That's all right. I get
at
all my
lunch,
things.
at lunch, I was like, I think I called her Janine, and I was like, I don't think that's right, so I apologize.
No worries.
And publicly, on Facebook,
Oh,
live.
okay, well, that's
In front of however
I'm
many
done.
people are watching,
I'm done.
probably nobody. But, so no sales meeting, so we'll start at 9 tomorrow. And then, what we're gonna do then is we're gonna jump into, so we're gonna first, I'm gonna jump into a few other skill related things in the morning. First thing, we're gonna get into some skill stuff. And then, once we're done with the skill stuff, then we'll go through and do some role play on some door knocking, just listed stuff. And then, so we'll go through, we'll talk a little bit about, we're gonna hit on in the morning for sale by owners, expires, just listed, just sold. And then we're gonna jump into open houses. And I'm gonna run you through how to do an open house if you're gonna do them, doing them the right way. Because here's what I'll tell you. We talked about 82% of the people will do something. You can get appointments with 60%. So if you have 10 people 10 groups come through, you should get 6 appointments with them. And I'm gonna teach you how to do that, because you can do it. And I'm gonna teach you how to get the appointments with those people so that you end up doing a ton of business from it. So, because here's what we found. So as part of this study, what we found is if you will get appointments with 6 people, you'll put one of them under contract, either list their home or write an offer for them on one of them within 30 days. So if you had an open house and you had 10 people come through and you get 6 appointments, you'll put one under contract within 30 days. Now the interesting thing is, if you only got 5 appointments out of 10 groups, if you only get 5, it doesn't happen. I mean, I'm not saying it won't, but it doesn't. But you can count every single time we did it and we tracked this, that you got 6 out of 10, you did a deal within 30 days. If you only got 5, it didn't happen. Like, I'm not saying you wouldn't, but it was predictable at 6, but at 5 it wasn't. Does that make sense? So there's magic in 60%. So anyway, kind of cool, and that's a little bit of a commercial for tomorrow. So anyway, 9 o'clock, have a good night. We'll see you in the morning, and we'll get going. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.